Chris. There were pages came that had changes from Chris, asterisks on my daily work, and I was looking at it and I was like, I don't see the change. I couldn't see a change. It looked exactly the same to me. So I called Chris, or I saw Chris, and I said, "What's the change that you're looking for?" Because I don't see it. And he said, "No, I just had to correct the widows and the orphans." And I said, "Well, wait a minute. So what you're saying is, like, every time I have a dialogue block, it has to be a perfect block." And he's like, "Yes." And I said, "So all these years you've been writing ... I've been taking pauses because I think Mulder's having a thought. But what's really happening is Chris is trying to make it a block."
I think that happened very late in our,
It did.
our relationship.
It took me 12 years to find that out. 12 seasons of Mulder going,
Dash.
oh, the dashes. Yeah. Anyway, so I think that's a beautiful story.
OCD.
Make it work for you.
All right. How many people have read the book?
Oh, geez.
Well,
It's short. Give me time. Let's just make it better.
We're looking at the short. Okay, well, so the thing I was afraid of were spoilers. So I'm going
Don't worry about that.
I'm going to be careful with spoilers because the book is kind of a mystery. Anyway, I found the book, and as you know, I think I've spoken to you about it, like funny, ironic, wry, perceptive, and definitely smarter than others. Anyway, the character's name is Ridley, as David said, and we find him alone in his apartment with his martinis. He's got no significant relationship with his daughter, his grandkids, his ex-wife. He imagined himself an artist with a cell phone. Is he pathetic or merely sad?
Is that a question? Well, it's a good question because I think in the beginning when I started writing it, I was writing a pathetic guy that I was satirizing. And then he became sad and lonely as I went along, as I began. And I'm sure you've had this experience when you're writing that the characters start to almost advocate for themselves. You know, it's weird. It's weird how that happens in fiction or in dramatic writing. So he started to advocate for himself as a, you know, he started saying, like, "Stop making fun of me. Take me seriously, Dave."
Life of his own.
Yeah. He took on a life of his own, and I started to respect that and tried to ride that out. And so in the beginning I would think, pathetic.
Yeah.
And it
And
changed.
then he changed.
He changed me.
Yeah.
He changed my opinion of him. Yeah.
Mine too. But as I said, Ridley imagines himself an artist. He questions whether he's an artist at all. He's a Wall Street man, as you said, but concludes that he is an artist and that the virus is speaking through him like a ventriloquist. Explain that a little bit.
I think what I mean by that is that you know, a writer needs an event. A lot of people would say, you know, of the generation after World War II that they had, you know, it was a tragedy, of course, but they had that war. You know, they had service to write about. They had a big event, and Ridley has had this inkling that he's an artistic soul, but he's always worked on Wall Street, and he's made his 9-to-5 money, and he's raised a family. He hasn't had an event, and I think it's like great tragedies or great events. If you're a vessel of some kind of an interpretive vessel, artistic vessel, then they speak through you, and people learn about it through you. And what falls back for him, it falls back to 9/11, which to me, you know, in my adulthood, 9/11 and the pandemic were the great tragic events, and they're kind of twinned in this book. And that was not something that I had planned on doing. And in fact, when I chose Ridley as a Wall Streeter, I didn't know that he was there at 9/11. And that also came about as a surprise, that he was down there on that day.
So you really had no idea how the book was going to end when you started?
No, I thought I kind of had the template of Death in Venice, that he would be drawn out of his isolation into a plague-ridden city, and because of some kind of sexual attraction or attraction to a mystery, he was going to endanger his own life. But I didn't know anything else, really. I just wanted to set up that question and then see where it led.
The book starts with a view out over the reservoir, and you talk about the reservoir being the reason that the character bought his apartment, principally. And would you say that's the same
guilty?
with you?
Yes, guilty. Yes, yeah, for sure. I mean, I walked into that apartment and I was like, okay, well, I mean, the thing about New York is it's very cramped, right? And it's vertical. And I didn't grow up, well, I actually did grow up with a view on 11th Street, 2nd Avenue. I had a view of a graveyard, which explains a lot.
A Dutch graveyard.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's great. Peter Stuyvesant was buried there. And Mulder is Chris's mother's maiden name, and that's a Dutch name. And so I grew up with an interesting view from New York, for sure. A weird view. There's no graveyards in New York, really. It's the only one. It's on St. Mark's there, in the middle of the city. And so anyway, just to see the park open up when I walked into that apartment was everything to me. It felt like it was bigger than it was. You know, the park was expansive. You've never been?
I've never. Well, I feel like I've been because I've seen some of the.
I would send Chris time lapses.
Yes, the book. I don't know if David described how beautiful these time-lapse photographs he takes are of the reservoir and the skyline beyond, and you know, they bloom like flowers, and he would send them to me occasionally, and
I was trying to get him to buy my apartment.
yeah, exactly. Didn't work. You know, Ridley, you know, he calls this art that he's making his legacy.
Yeah.
He actually thinks he's going to do something with it, or it's going to appear somewhere, or it's going to define him. And I think it really comes out of the pandemic, but actually considering social media and TikTok, et cetera, couldn't you say that the pandemic actually created a lot of artists?
Yeah, I suppose you can. And I think we have like a wild west of expression and content out there. And I think in his own middle-aged way, he thinks his understanding of it is I'll be able to, he says, get a YouTube channel or something like that. And he doesn't say TikTok. I think I wrote it before TikTok. But yeah, he's thinking like that. He's thinking like, you know, I have something to say, or the virus has something to say through me, or I've been made eloquent by this suffering, and I'm gonna find a venue for it, which has been made possible in the last 10 years of the internet.
Doesn't he have like an apartment, a decathlon that he does, where he runs 100 steps?
Triathlon.
Triathlon.
That's the exercise. I don't know if you all, well, in LA, you're less confined, but I had him thinking that, you know, he had three ways to exercise. There was to walk from the kitchen to the living room, which was the sprint. There was the walk from the kitchen to the bathroom, which was middle distance. And then I forget what the marathon was. It was, you know, kitchen to a back bedroom somewhere. And that's basically, you know, his events. But that's just like, it's all, that was the amazing thing about lockdown, at least for me in New York, was that everything was happening on my screen. You know, the world was on fire, falling apart, dying. And every day had a million things to process, politically, socially, globally. Nothing was happening in my apartment. I never went out. So this vertigo of like my life is completely circumscribed. And yet the world outside is completely undone. And I was kind of trying to give voice to that kind of whiplash. I think we're still there in a way, some way.
My next question. The narrative is actually quite simple in the book, but the story's complex. Ridley confabulates for days on end. Is this a kind of madness?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think again going back to the lockdown was like, yeah, you were trapped with your thoughts. You were trapped with your mind, and this is a guy who's not having any human contact really. So he's looking back on his life and trying to, figure out some mistakes, what he's responsible for, what was done to him, and what he did to others. Mostly the stuff with his daughter, how to make up with his daughter, because he's not seeing his daughter because he's afraid that her kids are not going to follow the rules and mask. And at some point he said, I don't want your kids to kill me. And his daughter is rightfully upset about that, although understanding. But they haven't really patched it up since then, since the beginning of the pandemic. And this is his wound. That's like his major wound there. That's the wound that's at the, on the one hand, it's a guy who thinks he's going to solve all the mysteries of the world and the QAnon and the ballots and 9/11 and all of it. It's all underneath the reservoir, and he's going to find it. But really, the emotional impetus for it all, underneath the big mystery of the world is always like, it's Rosebud, it's always like the personal thing. And for him, it's this rupture with his daughter, which does get resolved in some way. I said in some way. Okay, all right. Nobody dies. Everybody dies.
Did anyone read Maureen Dowd yesterday? New York Times.
Was it Depp and
It was on Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
yeah.
Yeah, but she quotes John Milton. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven or a hell or a hell of heaven. I thought that was kind of true of your book as well.
Yeah.
My question though is, what do you think of Johnny Depp?
I was wondering what the easy questions were going to start. No winners there, man. That's what I think. None of us, none of them, nobody. Yeah, I myself am hell. Whither I fly, am hell. I myself, whither I fly is hell. I myself, it's all Milton's Satan. Yeah. Yeah. I studied that shit.
Period.
So in the entirety of the book, there is one conversation. Actually, it's two conversations, but with the same person. And the rest of the book, as I said, is a confabulation. But that conversation is hilarious. It's with a man in the park in what they call the Ramble. And that's a place for gay assignations, gay hookups. And it goes there. I happen to actually live when I was living in Vancouver, above a Ramble of sorts. so I've never been to the Ramble in Central Park. And I'm sorry, this is probably politically incorrect. Don't cancel me. They call this Ramble in Vancouver. They call it the Fruit Loop. And I could watch from my apartment window all night long, people wandering in and out of the bushes, literally all night long. And so I have a fascination for exactly what you're writing about, which is this place where people go to have anonymous thoughts. You say that.
I hope there's a question.
I just wanted to tell that story. You say that all men have a ramble in them. Is that true? Yes. Yes, that's what I mean. Yes, what I mean.
Well, I think that's from like the Death and Venice inspiration. Because at one point I thought that he was going to have a relationship with a man for the first time in his life, and that was going to be the revelation to himself. That it doesn't quite play out. But to Ridley, and maybe you as well, he can kind of, with his binoculars, he can look at the Ramble from his window. I'm not sure if that's true, because I can't, but poetic license. And it's really, he imagines that he would go down there. Now what happens is, like, he has this conversation with this huge guy, and the guy is terrifying. He's as big as a bear, and he's unhinged. And because of the pandemic, really, honestly, he's alone in the park with this guy. There's nobody around, and he feels threatened. It's really two people alone in the world. One of them's huge and crazy. And he's kind of been watching the Ramble in a way, and that's a leftover, as I said, from when the story's going to go that way. But he's very accepting of the need, and that's one of the places where I kind of dug him, was like, just the need that drives people there in the darkness, to find love in the darkness, to find connection in the darkness, especially during the pandemic like that. It's super dangerous. What a life force. He calls it holy need. He calls it holy need. So
say you have to go to the darkness to find the light.
Yeah, the light in that darkness is the need. So yeah, I think we're on the same side there. We're saying, you go, do what you need to do. What page is that? She said, what page is that? But at the time it was excellent. How praise. No.
I said earlier that Ridley doesn't have a significant relationship with his daughter, his grandkids, his ex-wife. He's alone. He's been alone for months in his apartment, as Nick was describing. But actually, Ridley does have a significant relationship. And I think everyone here can appreciate that. He has a relationship with his phone. And that plays out in a big way in the book. I wonder if you could
Yeah, well, I have a love-hate relationship. Well, I think I just have a hate-hate relationship.
Well, it comes out in the book.
Yeah. Well, the phone for Ridley is the way he's going to be an artist. He's taking these time-lapse photos with the phone. But he's a guy my age, and he gets frustrated with the functions of it, doesn't know how to work it correctly. Even though his daughter has set it up for him and all that stuff. And I'm very ambivalent about social media and the whole thing. Although it's not in the book. There's no social media really in it. Ridley fantasizes, as I said, about a YouTube channel, which is moronic. But again, I would just say, sitting in my apartment, ingesting the world through a screen, I would counsel us all to just take a moment and think what it means to live our lives with screen versions of each other, primarily. Pandemic made us do that, but we were well on our way to doing that anyway. And now we're kind of coming out of it, and look, whatever happens in life, in history, is going to happen. If the phone is ascendant, it's ascendant, and we're going to have to live with it in that way, and the kids are going to figure out how to live with it and how to be human. But it's hard for me to make that transition, and that's all I'm kind of dealing with in the book, is just like, what does it do to your brain? What kind of a human brain is it anymore that lives this way, that has this buddy in your pocket all day? I don't know. I don't know the answer. Certainly, it's convenient. I'll say that. I get lost a lot less. Might not be a good thing.
That got me here tonight. So, also, as David described, there is a relationship in the book. He does have another relationship in the book with a mystery woman. And it's a very complex relationship, and he goes through, the character Ridley goes through an entire and exhaustive courtship with this woman through the course of these 125 pages. Playing games, playing hard to get, hurt and obsessed, enthralled. It goes into a very unexpected place.
Yeah, and she only has one line, and she says it twice.
Right, she says it twice.
Yeah. What does she say?
She says, not yet.
Not yet.
I can't.
I can't. Not yet. Not yet. Well, that's it. That's my take on life.
Yeah.
Right there. What is it? What's your question on that?
No question.
Yeah, she's like, she's a mystery woman. We'll leave it at that. She's a mystery.
Yeah.
Mystery. See, no spoiler there.
Oh, also I want to point out that the Death in Venice, there is another nod to Death in Venice. If all of you are familiar with that story about a man who develops a fixation of beauty and mortality with this young boy. Anyway, you make a nod to the author. You have a conversation with this guy who's as big as a bear, and that's a hilarious conversation.
Yeah.
But you call him Man.
Yeah.
And that's a nod to Thomas Mann.
Sure. Yeah. Guilty. Also, his name is Ursus. He's a bear.
Ursus,
Yes,
right? He
Major.
is Ursus.
In my mind, he was the actual constellation Ursus Major. And when Ridley says, how long are you here for? He says, like every night. That's what he means.
That's interesting. I didn't get that. Okay, so Ridley wakes up every morning to a Led Zeppelin song, Kashmir. Do you guys all know the song?
Yes.
Everyone nods, they all know the song. And I think that would be a terrible song to wake up to.
Oh, it's an awesome song to wake up to.
No, I mean, when you wake up,
Come up.
you definitely want to wake up to the Immigrant song.
Okay, here's the story. I had the lead quote of the book when I was writing it was lyrics from Kashmir. And then I went to go get the rights, and they wanted like $3,000 for them. I was like, I get some of the lyrics. So I actually got a quote of Robert Plant talking about Kashmir for free. Wise and frugal.
The character Ridley does leave his apartment, if you haven't gathered that already, and I want to point out that he sheds blood copiously in this story. He has an accident with a credenza. He has an accident in this bramble that we were describing, and he is eaten by seagulls.
Not fully. He's attacked by seagulls. It's not eaten by seagulls. Yeah. She said I got my book back. I'm gonna be doing a little tour for the next week. Maybe you come along with me across the country.
Anyway, I just want to point that out, that be prepared that there's a lot of blood and guts in this. Anyway, I'll go back to the hilarious conversation with this character, man, or Ursus, as you call him. He tells a very funny joke. Is that a joke that you made up?
No, I wish I made that joke.
It's an old joke.
An old joke.
Yeah, it's a really good joke. I always get nervous when I read jokes in books because I'm afraid that people are gonna read them and then you'll never be able to tell the joke. But anyway, this joke is about a man and a bear.
You want me to tell the joke?
Yeah, tell the joke.
You want me to tell the joke? Can I tell something about you in jokes?
Sure. You're not gonna do this, are you?
No. Why don't you tell them what you tried to do once as like a social experiment? Did you make up a joke and tell it?
All right, and see how.
This is Chris Gardner. This is his mind. Tell them what you did.
No, you tell them.
I don't know it.
I wanted to see if I made up a joke, it had to be a good joke, how long it would take to get back to me.
This is before internet.
Yeah.
So this is like just gossip world around the world coming back. But you told it cross country, didn't you?
Cross country.
And then you flew back, trying to beat the joke back.
It wasn't that good a joke.
So the joke in this is a guy goes into the woods hunting for bear. He's got a rifle. Tap on his shoulder. Turns around, it's a bear. Shit. Bear says, well, takes his rifle. Says, I can either kill you or fuck you. Your choice. Bear goes, fuck me. Bear fucks him. Gives him his rifle back. Guy goes back home. Goes back hunting for bear again. His rifle, looking for the bear. Tap on his shoulder. Bear takes his rifle. Says, I'm trying to kill you or fuck you. He goes, fuck me, I guess. Fucks him again. Guy goes home. Goes back in the woods, hunting for bear, got his rifle. Tap on his shoulder, bear takes his rifle and says, this isn't about hunting, is it? I wish I'd made up that joke. Is that okay for you, that joke? Bit of a spoiler. Oh, did it beat him home? Did you ever hear your joke again?
Yes, I heard my joke again. Yes. It took a long time. I forget. It was the bear joke. Central Park takes central stage in the story, and you referred to it variously. You said that there are no graveyards in New York, in Manhattan, but you referred to it variously, I should say, as the green heart of Manhattan, a living memorial to our defeat of nature, a huge gravestone of the vernal past. In the quote on the cover, Amanda Peet says she'll never look at the park in the same way. What does the park mean to you?
It means those things. How many people are from New York here? No, just a few, yeah. Yeah, I didn't grow up near the park, but it's come to mean a lot to me, and I've seen it variously in ways that I talk about in this book. I've spoken about it in other books that I've written variously too. I've called it the prison yard for the prison that is Manhattan. You know, and then like I had this vision of people just like getting out of their cells and being able to walk around the park. I've called it a giant wee pad for the 1% for their dogs. And then Ridley is looking there, and he's contemplating the reservoir really, which is, you know, the depths. Even though the actual reservoir is not, but think of the ocean. And he's also aware that there was a potter's field in Central Park that the bodies of indigent people, enslaved people, people who had nobody to claim them, are buried in that park that we call Central Park. So there's hidden histories of everywhere we go, especially some places old as New York. And Ridley in this book is someone who gets trapped trying to chase the mystery to the source, and he does at some point. No spoiler alert, but he does get deep enough under the reservoir. You know, he beats the gulls back long enough to see a number of answers, a number of conspiracies, and this is where we touch on like X-Files stuff. You know, where not X-Files stuff, but just conspiracy stuff, and just the question of people's need for conspiracy stories, people's need for answers to life's mysteries and history.
So
you know a little something about that, don't you?
About what?
Conspiracy stuff. Turning the tables now, Agent
Yeah, you're
Orange.
right. Exactly. Too many conspiracies. You worked as a lifeguard as a kid, so you have spent a lot of time in the water. And there's a that features. It's featured in the story.
Yeah. Mostly because I hate to do research, so a lot of the time. So, what did this guy do as a kid? Oh, he's a lifeguard. I know what that's like. Yeah, he was a lifeguard, but it all made sense. You know, again, it's just one of these, I guess, serendipitous, lucky, whatever. Made him a Wall Street veteran. 9/11 became a key player in the story. Made him a lifeguard, and then water became the key element of the story. The reservoir underneath the water, losing somebody to the water, drowning, transforming, breathing in water. So those were all just random choices that I made, either out of laziness or just closeness. And then they, either unconsciously, I knew I was going to go there, or I was lucky enough to make that choice and it forced me to go in that direction. I don't know.
You tell a story, a very scary story about being in the waves with your daughter, and I know that comes from your life. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, that's kind of the key memory towards the end of the book, is Ridley is remembering not only being a lifeguard, but remembering going out with his daughter, which is what I did at some point over at Carbon. And she was young, like 3, and I got her out past where we should go out, but it was calm, and then all of a sudden, like a rogue set came in, big waves, and I just held on to her, and we were just getting rocked and dunked, and I just told myself I wouldn't let go, even though I was holding her under way too long. I didn't know. We were both under, just head over heels, turning. It's terrifying. And then, the waves passed. My daughter was like, "You were dunking me." She had no idea that she thought I was doing it to her, and of course I let her think that, because I didn't want to say your father's a fucking idiot. And then I just remember my knees were weak, and I got out of the water, and I just sat there, and like Ridley, I was like, what kind of a person are you? So it's like that. It's just like, little mistakes that we make that can get magnified. And yeah.
I actually know somebody who had the same experience, but lost their grip on their child, and miraculously constantly popped up and was able to grab the kid. Scary stories. You also tell a funny story, and I'm wondering if this comes from your life as well. Being at a party.
No. I made that up.
Forgetting your wife's name.
I never forgot her.
Dog.
Has anybody ever forgotten their spouse's name? You have? You have? Who said that? You did? That's it? Just one? Just like in the moment, like, hey, I'm interested. Oh, this is my. Like, you forgot my name, didn't you? I was like, as if. No, but I never did.
I only have a couple more questions.
Okay.
So, Ridley has no relationship with his daughter, even though she is trying desperately to make contact with him. And in the end, she has to break into his apartment. And she finds his phone. Not to spoil what happens, but she finds his phone perched where he takes these time-lapse videos. Anyway, she finds her dad in some state of utter stress, and she wants the phone is actually not trained on the reservoir at this point, it's trained inside. And I just wonder what Coral would have seen on that video if she would have seen it.
Yeah. I was pretty proud of that little detail.
Nice.
Yeah. Because when she comes into her father's apartment, the phone is perched as if it's taking a time lapse at the sunrise, but in fact, he's over-tapped it because he's an old dude, not good with technology. And he's been taking a picture of the inside of the apartment, or a self-portrait of what, was a very difficult night for him. And what would she have seen? We'll never know.
Yeah.
She does not want, she's not sure she wants to see.
Although she does doom scroll.
She does doom scroll a
Trying to
little bit.
figure out what sins of the father.
Yes, she wants to know her father, and the phone is what's left of that. And it's the final condemnation and exaltation of the phone, is that this will be the key to the mystery of who her dad was what's on his phone? What was he Googling? What dating sites was he on? What porn did he look at? All this stuff. It's like, do you want to see it? Do you want to know? Is that him? Does that make you know him? Do we know you by your phone? Is there a second book? Ridley's phone, sure. Yeah. I'm just making sure I got mine on me.
I have, before I turn it over to questions, I'm sure that.
And you can ask Chris questions that are not related to the book. You're welcome.
So, you can go on Audible and you can actually listen to David read the book.
That's not the same book.
It's not quite the same book,
Yeah.
but I would recommend that you go listen to it anyway because he reads it beautifully.
Oh, thanks.
And I wanted to hear you read. I've actually listened to you twice read the book.
Oh,
I like it so much.
it's funny. I get a lot. I go on the websites and I look at reviews and shit like that. I get a lot of the same feedback I always did when I was first auditioning for parts. Flat.
It's the opposite of flat. It's very good. You do voices.
I've been saying it for 30 years.
voices.
30 years of it.
Anyway, I wanted to hear him read the book, and when I got to the end, Audible, as they do, suggests if you like the Reservoir, that you can read this book and this book, and they recommend David's other books if you you may know them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was good, because sometimes I get pissed off at the algorithm, because the algorithm will suggest.
Well, that's what I was going to tell you.
What
Is
is that?
I don't know why, but
What
they're
is
also
it?
suggesting that like Dean Koontz. Do you know why?
No. But, and then I don't know what he read. I think he read thrillers, right?
I was thinking maybe the only thing I could think would be an X-Files connection.
The only connection I can think of is a Californication connection, because there was a season with Peter Gallagher. He was the dean of some college that I was guest lecturing at as Hank Moody, and his name was Koontz, so he was Dean Koontz.
Could be the algorithm, yeah.
That's, the algorithm went deep. No, I get pissed at the algorithm because I'll look at the algorithm, like with the music, I'll look at the music, like if you like David Duchovny, you'll like every other actor that makes music. Doesn't matter what kind of music they make.
Right.
It's like, oh, apparently you like actors who make music. So maybe you like Kiefer Sutherland and Jeff Bridges. It's like, how stupid is that algorithm? Anyway, we'll open it up now.
Yeah.
Got no hope up here, Chris.
Do you want me to?
No Barnes, no Noble. Nobody. Neither Barnes nor Noble. Nowhere in sight. Okay. To the pink.
Great, very excited to meet you guys. Congratulations on both. Sorry, I have a telephone relationship with my phone. So I'm sorry about this. My question is regarding to, I'm an author too. So David, what advice can you give to young authors or people who want to start writing their first book related to your own creative process of what you learned as an author?
You have to sit your ass down in the seat and write.
That's exactly the advice I give.
It's just doing it. Can't wait.
There's a very famous story about a physicist, and his name is Hans Bethe, and he worked on the atomic bomb, and he was a mathematician. And he was famous because he would be working on a problem, and the equation, and when he got to a place where he didn't know what was next, he would sit there with his pen on the paper, and he wouldn't take it off. And I always thought that's exactly the advice you want to give to a writer. Put your fingers on the keyboard and do not remove them. And you are 90% of the way there.
And no orphans or widows.
I really enjoyed the line, I don't know if I'm saying it exactly correct, but you stated that there's not a vaccine for fathers and daughters. And I thought that was really prevalent to the pandemic in general, just trying to bleed into like things that actually matter during that time and making a connection to your family. So as a writer, as you're going through this process, is that something that you realize throughout the storytelling that matters to you?
It's an interesting question. Probably didn't hear it so well back there. It's a question about fathers and daughters, and there's a line in the book that says something like, there's no vaccine for love between fathers and daughters. But love is not written in that line, but that's the implication, the fraught kind of, the difficult love. Or fathers and sons, or fathers and, mothers and daughters, just parents and kids. And I think sometimes my process, I think, when I look back on it as a writer, has been that I have an inciting incident in my head, or an inciting emotion. In this case, let's say it is parent-child, and then I hang a story on it. But at first I'm just trying to tell a story, but I don't know yet I didn't know yet that it was about that, you know. And in a way, I've written to find out what the real impulse to write it was. Yes, it was to tell a story that's entertaining, or you know, whatever that might surprise someone. But you know, surprise yourself as a writer. That's part of what happened with this book. Was I didn't know it was going to be about that.
Yeah, I thought that it was a really beautiful line, because it felt like just discovering as
Yeah. Well, a lot of it happens that way for me, anyway. And I think it is. I think the cliche is true that if you are surprised yourself when you're writing them, you can surprise the reader. And I'm not saying just come up with crazy shit that makes no sense, which is surprising in a nonsensical way. But the surprise in this sense is that, oh, that's what's eating at the sky. That's what's driving the story. Okay, thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Duchovny. So I have two questions. My first question is, I haven't read the book yet, which I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chris Gordon, Mr. Duchovny, my question is that since you played Fox Mulder in the X-Files, did it influence you running this role as your role character? And my second question is, will there be another X-Files?
Answer the first question.
The X-Files does not influence my thinking or my storytelling, but Chris, the writer, and Chris, the creator of the X-Files, and then the X-Files themselves, have influenced me deeply as a writer, because when I came out of school, I was a graduate student, and the story's not important. There's no story. You're not talking about story. And then I started working as an actor, and then I started working with Chris on the X-Files, and it was all story. X-Files are great stories, and at first I was like, a story. And then, as the years went on, I really saw the glory in the story and fell in love again with plot, and really it remade me as a writer. I think I would have been, kind of pretentious, but I would have been a more pretentious, kind of post-structuralist, nothing happens in this book ever kind of writer. And then I was like, no, I like good yarn. I like to be scared. I like to wonder what's coming next, and that's all from this guy here.
The second part of that question.
Yes. Will there be another X-Files season 2?
So Jillian made a big announcement at the end of the last one that she wasn't coming back, and that influenced a lot of the end of the story. But I got a call last week.
I didn't hear about it.
That Disney, who owns the franchise, is actually considering a reboot, and it would be with new characters.
It's okay.
As I say, I got a phone call.
Plenty of room in the sandbox, people. Big sandbox.
Anyway, so I just wanted to tell you that, and I wanted to see how it played for the room. And obviously, it was a winner.
It's funny when we say the whole names, but we don't know why. But we keep doing it, and it is always funny. But go ahead.
Mayor needs to address it.
Say louder so they can all hear.
I said, hi, David Duchovny. Real quick, I just want to say I have a beautiful memory of watching House of Blues with my dad.
It's a lovely new piece. Thank
Got a lot of shit for that one.
So, what would David's algorithm suggest? Like maybe the last 3 books that really got you excited.
I always go back to American Pastoral. I feel like it's the best novel of the last 50 years. Anything by Richard Powers, Overstory, Echo Maker, just a brilliant writer. So I'd say Overstory, Echo Maker, American Pastoral. And then I go back to this book by Mary Ruffle. I don't know how to pronounce her name, I apologize, but it's called Madness, Rack, and Honey. And she's a lecturer, I think, of English literature. And it's not so much that book itself, it's not a novel, but it reminds me of all these great poems that I once read or have forgotten, and this great mind that this professor talking about. It makes me want to go back and read them again. It makes me want to be a reader again. So I recommend that book all the time, Madness, Rack, and Honey. Did I give you that book?
You did not. Good luck finding it. I'm going to go all the way to the back, since you've been choosing from the front. You? Me? Yes. Sorry.
Was it me or him? Was it me?
You.
Me?
No, him.
Then you.
So my first question is, so David, in a recent article or a recent interview with Vanity Fair, you said that you kind of started out with Mulder, and then you kind of swung in the other end of the spectrum with Hank Moody, and then you kind of swung back to Mulder with Aquarius. So you think this book is kind of you swinging back to Hank Moody?
No, I'm just swinging.
And my other question was, if there ever was a Californication reboot, do you think your character would do in like this really politically correct world?
If there was another Californication, what?
How well do you think your character, like how well do you think your character in the show would function in like this really politically correct world?
Oh, yeah, well, that's the question, isn't it? It's hard to answer that one. And I would be a fool if I tried.
All right. I'm young woman who stood up asking me if it was you.
Sorry. My mom sent me. First of all, I'm sorry.
Your mom sent you?
She said it was a list too, but I'm just gonna ask her.
I don't know if you're okay with this, but I'm not.
So, she's like a super fan or something. She wanted to ask what inspires the book first, and she also told me to ask you if anything like different happened in season 11. So she said she felt like the character's personality was different. I know this isn't about that, but she put it on her list.
Season 11, Mulder's personality is different? Is that what you're saying?
That's basically what she said, but in a bunch of different colorful words.
Colorful words.
She's like a huge fan of you. She thinks
I think maybe, yeah. I don't know. I'd have to know what she meant. Season 11, Mulder different. I don't know. Was he?
Not from my perspective.
Yeah. I mean, in all honesty, and we've talked about this, or I've talked about it, the problem for me is, when I started playing Mulder, I was 32, I think, but he was younger than that. I think he was 28, maybe, I don't know, but he was a young man, and he had boyish enthusiasms and passions. And then by the time we came back to play him all those years later, he was a grown-ass man, as you could say. And that kind of boyish enthusiasm, it couldn't play. Wouldn't be right. Couldn't be seen, would be unseen. So I had to figure that out. Now, according to Miller, I didn't figure it out well. But certainly, it was something I was trying to figure out. And I don't think it had anything to do with the writing or writing it differently. It was really, what looks right on a guy this age as opposed to 20 years ago.
I think that's accurate. Okay. I'm going to choose you. You.
Hi. So I was wondering, out of all of the roles you've played and all the little pop-ins and things you've been in, which one of your roles is most like you, or that you reflect yourself in more? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but it's like, why would I ever answer that?
Is it giving too much away?
Yeah.
Too many secrets?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can tell you, David's one of the funniest people that I know. So anything that has humor in it, I think is a reflection of who he is. So
Well, this is something that we talked about when we were doing the X-Files. Chris and I were always like, I was always pushing for
yeah,
more humor.
you-
And Chris was always the gatekeeper on that. And he liked it up to a point. But his point was always, we don't want to let the air out of the balloon. This is life and death here. And he's right.
Yeah, I watched the pilot again recently, and I'll tell you why in a second. And
You didn't invite me over to watch the pilot.
There's plenty of humor in it, but there's actually something that we cut out that David was very funny, but I thought it was too much.
What was it?
You did a very funny thing where you did an old Jewish woman, and it was just too much. Although I think if it were season 11, we would have left it in. So that's how much the show changed.
I don't know what it is. You have the tape?
No, I can't remember exactly that one, but I want to tell you why there was a viewing of the pilot. I hadn't seen it for a long time. Does everyone know, if you're an X-Files fan, that there is now an X-Files museum
Yes.
in Saratoga Springs, New York? I went back for the grand opening. It blew my mind. I gave them a bunch of stuff, but I couldn't believe how much stuff these guys have collected. Anyway, it was crazy. I think there were 500 people that came to the opening. What blows my mind is 30 years later, that there's a fandom out there that blows my mind, and you guys are part of that. And just know that it couldn't be more appreciated.
If I could just add to that, the kind of troublesome voices get magnified, online and stuff like that. And Chris is not someone who's online very much, but I think he's aware of those things. And when he came back and he told me that he was moved by 500 people showing up at this museum, I was moved by that because I don't think Chris understands how beloved he is. And I think people should also understand how much of the show is him. And I think that sometimes that gets lost in the discussions of nitpickings and things, people like this or they don't like that. But without him, none of it. Zero. And he needs to hear that sometimes. But he's not in places where he can hear it. Maybe right now, though.
And I want to add to that I had a lot of really good help.
Yeah, you did, but I'm still saying.
And I think you guys know who a lot of these people are, because a lot of them have gone on to greatness. Okay, I was in the back, I'm gonna go to the front.
Has Miss Subway's ever, what's that? I'd love to have it optioned. A producer had it for a bit. No money changed hands, but we were trying to find somebody to commit to it, an actress or producer. I still think it could be, should be. I think it's. Well, no, why not? Yeah, no. I mean, I agree with you. I think it's a TV show. I think it's a good TV show, really good. Yeah.
I'll go. Okay, Man in the Hat.
Thank you. So Evolution is one of my favorite movies, and I was wondering if there was any possibility of revisiting that, if you would ever work with Orlando
Well,
Jones
yeah,
again.
no. I mean, people brought that up occasionally, but Ivan just died recently, and so I probably not. I mean, I love Orlando. I'm still in touch with Orlando, and Sean is terrific. But I don't know. I don't know where you go. I don't know what the story would be, but write it.
All right. Thank you. I will.
You choose. Okay. All right. Now she's over here.
My name is Michelle. I just wanted to know if this was for one of you. You've done almost everything, producing, writing, acting. What's the other one?
I don't have a bucket list. I don't think I have a bucket list.
You have a hole in your bucket list?
Nice
Is there
one.
anything else you want to do?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I have no hidden talent that I can now go to. There's nothing else. I've kind of squeezed everything I might be able to do. So I don't know. Yeah, I got nothing left. But I got some things that I like to do, so I feel lucky.
I don't know if you guys know, but David is a superior athlete, and I'm not sure how many people know that. But I once said to him that I was doing a triathlon. He said, "I think I'd like to do that Ironman triathlon." So
Yes, I like to do an Ironman triathlon. Here's an X-Files trivia tidbit. Chris and I both did, after I did the triathlon, Chris was like, I'm going to do a triathlon too. So we did the triathlon in Malibu, but we didn't, because Chris is significantly older than me. He was in it 3 years, 4 years, 4 years. He was in a different heat. He was with the old dudes, and I was with slightly less old dudes. And so we never saw each other during the race. And we finish and we get our times the next day. You got to go to a website, get your time down to the hundredths of a second. We had the identical time. Identical, right?
yes,
Crazy. And he says, I win because I'm older. That's what he said. Am I friends with Evan Handler?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're friends. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I rubbed that head for good luck. Yep, the runks.
you choose.
Yes, sir.
I had a question about how much importance actually gives to choosing the cover and how you came up with this one.
Cover's important. Judge a book by its cover. And yeah, I've been involved in the covers of all the books. This one, I didn't really give them any. Well, no, I didn't give them any ideas really. They came with two different ones, and I liked them both. And I think we chose this because it looked more like a thriller. The other cover was like an empty rowboat inside the reservoir in New York. It was more of a daytime winter scene, and this was. My only comment was the guy he seems to have no hair or genitals. Look at the cover.
Cover, right.
Yeah, he looks like a like a Ken doll. And they said that nobody would care.
All right, but I'm getting it.
Nobody cares.
I'm getting at 2 more questions.
Okay, you got it. You choose them. That was very powerful. That one in the back. Yeah. No. Right behind you. Then you're next. You and then you. It's impossible. This is a no-win situation.
This one's for Chris. Are you writing anything right now?
Am I writing anything? Yes, I'm writing. I'm always writing something. And it is nothing like the X-Files, I can tell you that. And that's kind of where I've been for quite a while now. I just don't want to get pigeonholed as the X-Files guy because I think I have other things. I did take a hiatus to enjoy my life for a time, but I'm back at it.
Back to not enjoying your life.
Hi, my name is Sabina, and I wanted to ask, this is for both of you actually, I wanted to ask, what was your favorite X-Files episode to write? And if you don't have one, what was your favorite book you've written so far? That's for you. Yeah.
Oh, my favorite X-Files episode to write?
Yeah.
Oh, probably The Unnatural, the first one, just because.
Oh, it's so cool.
Thanks. It was just, I'd asked Chris, if I write a show, can I direct it? And he said, sure. And then it was that year when McGuire and Sosa were locked in this home run battle, and there was just an article in the LA Times about this guy who had hit like 70 home runs in Roswell, New Mexico, as a minor leaguer. He hit more home runs than anybody in organized baseball. That's not major league, but just minor leagues. And he played for Roswell. And I was like, there's got to be something there. And I wrote that script, and I feel very warmly about it. I feel it's very emotional. I feel it has a lot to say about racial politics that is, being said now, and I feel it's a little prescient. Is that the word? And I stand by it. I think it's a good one. I mean, there's huge mistakes in the beginning, but we lost an actor. Like I shot the first day I ever shot as a director, we had to reshoot because the actor got ill. Yeah. And anyway, so yeah, The Unnatural. Chris, for you?
It's a really hard question to answer.
I want to answer it for you.
Go ahead.
I want to say it's going to be Triangle or Postmodern Prometheus.
Yeah, I would say those two.
And Dwayne Barry.
And Dwayne Barry.
I'm good.
Yeah. I think that those are among them. Yeah, I'll go with David's choice. All right, we're being run off the stage.
Thank you all for coming out, and please enjoy the film.
Okay, I want to take a quick photo before we all move. Would you guys mind standing right in front of here and facing me? And then I want everyone to hold their books up super high. I already started reading it, it's great. You guys don't have to stand up, you can stay seated. Yeah, we're just gonna hold the books up super high. Yeah. Okay guys, we're taking the photos. Got it? Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Can we get another round of applause?